AI can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So I think we need to qualify AI inside of customer experience. Like, there are certain aspects of customer experience that AI has been helping for a very long time now.
What's your observation based on your research for organizations to make that CX strategy successful to bring real outcomes?
This is probably one of my most favorite questions right now because the opportunity to affect this is so accessible to anyone.
What is the value of qualitative analysis in today's world? How often companies do that? What's your observation? And they rely on it, or they just still go by overridden decisions?
More organizations than I think any of us should be comfortable with don't really dig in to the story behind the numbers.
My name's Justin Robbins, and I'm the founder of Metric Sherpa. After 2 decades in operations, SaaS go-to-market, and learning and development, I decided to build the next generation analyst firm for CX leaders, solution providers, and the investors shaping what's next. We operate at the intersection of research, strategy, and storytelling with a simple mission: help smart teams make clear decisions that drive meaningful results.
Let's talk about CX. Let's dive in. It's all over the places. For last couple of years, CX is almost in every single slide, every presentation, every goal, all leadership topics. It's been discussed everywhere. I think the only keyword is being talked more than CX is AI. And today we're going to talk about both. And because collectively today, I feel like they both hand to hand can do magic. AI has been transformed a lot over the last few years. What do you feel where it's moving? Does it have a future together?
All right, no pressure. CX and AI all in one spot. You asked the question of, does CX have a future? The short and easy.
With AI.
With AI.
With AI.
Ooh,
yeah.
CX.
Yeah,
with
CX,
AI.
CX is always the number one thing. Yeah. I mean, it's not a future. It's past, present, and future.
It is omnipresent.
It is.
Which is different than omnichannel. We won't go there.
I'm talking about with AI. I mean, self-driven customer experience using AI.
Look, CX already exists today with AI, and CX will continue to exist with AI. The real question is, what does that actually mean? What does it look like? The question I love asking my teams and organizations is, how will you know it when you see it? What does it really look like? Not just to deliver a customer experience, but to use AI as part of that. That, I think, is a bigger question that a lot of people will explore. I know you and I are going to explore that today. But the easy answer is there a future? Absolutely. Do I think we're going to run into some challenges in the coming years? Without a doubt.
What do you think successful CX looks like?
Yeah. It depends. And here's what I really mean when I say that. I think it's important to define terms, to have a shared language, a shared understanding of definition. And one of the first things you said is it's everywhere. You can't avoid a slide deck or a technology, or it doesn't matter, right? Everybody's talking about this idea of customer experience. And me being a curious person who's also willing to challenge people's understanding of whatever it is they want to talk about, I've put a lot of pressure on that lately. And maybe that's best represented by a series of conversations I had this past fall. Mm-hmm. And I've heard anecdotally from a number of people that customer experience is at risk of being defunded, that customer experience authority is changing, that it's being absorbed or it's becoming obsolete. I don't buy into any of that without having conversations and actually look at what's happening inside of organizations. So I talked to over 350 different enterprises, and my objective was twofold. The first was, when they use that term customer experience, what do they really mean? What does CX look like to them? So that was part one of the conversation. The second part of the conversation was, okay, the people that you've entrusted to lead, direct, measure, CX in your organization. Who are they? What do they do? What's their title? What's their authority? What can they affect and influence? And a bunch of very interesting discoveries, but I think two that are really pertinent to this, and as we think about what does great customer experience look like?
Yes.
The first is inside of organizations, with very few exceptions, people were not aligned on what it looks like for their team. If I talked to someone in sales or marketing or logistics or product, it didn't matter. They all gave me different definitions, and sometimes definitions that would even be in conflict with each other.
Yeah, it happens.
So part one was, how do you actually define it as an organization? But then when I look at the people responsible for customer experience, the CX leaders, if you will, I often found they fell into one of two camps. And sometimes within organizations, you'd have two or more people who had different aspects of it. But often one of the camps was they were some sort of customer insights. Maybe they ran voice of customer programs, or they ran surveying, customer listening, whatever it was. I put them squarely in the camp of they're responsible for customer insights. Then you have another group of CX leaders who have some sort of operational role. Maybe they run the organization's contact centers or customer service teams or customer success organizations, right? There's kind of an operational delivery and there's a insights marketing aspect to it.
Strategic side.
Right. You start to reconcile how these organizations are defining customer experience and the people that they have in place to, be their quote unquote CX leaders, it doesn't add up. And when I ask those CX leaders, what are you being measured on? What can you affect? How do you feel about your role? More than 80% of them were saying that they feel like they're kind of being set up to fail right now, that they don't have the right support and backing. They don't have the right influence and ability to affect within their organizations. And so they focus on and control the small part of things that they can, and they do it really, really well. But their organization's not actually driving great CX, and they don't have the right leader in place. Not that individual, right? But where they are within the organization, they don't have the right leader positioned to actually design and deliver what they're really meaning when they say customer experience.
So according to your assessment, it's like it was given an assignment to a group of people or teams, few teams, to manage the CX, not the organization-wide culture is set, which is customer-centric. So is that right?
Yeah, what is coming down to is organizations are relegating CX to a very specific functional box, right? It's like, oh, that's Colleen. Colleen's our CX leader. Oh, what does Colleen do? She runs our contact center. That's a great contact center leader. That's not CX. Oh, I know. You're talking about Steve. Steve runs our voice of the customer program, reports on NPS to our board. Again, really important functional aspect. That's not CX. What does great customer experience look like? It looks like an organization that has a really clearly defined outcome that they are proactively and intentionally moving toward. It's saying hey, maybe our company, whatever we do, this customer base for this line of business in this geography, great customer experience is this defined outcome that we're moving toward. And that's not by coincidence. That's intentional design. That's not the case for most organizations. The experiences that you and I have every single day are happy accidents, in the words of the great Bob, right? It's like they're not intentional. They're not well designed. They're in the midst of chaos. They're managed to be like glimmers of mediocrity.
Yeah. Customer needs to be emotionally attached with the brand. That leads to retention, hence revenue, hence customers become your marketers as well. That's the good customer experience looks like, according to me. It's not just numbers. Okay, NPS score directly and indirectly relates to a good customer experience outcome, but NRR speaks aligned with the same language. Like NPS and NRR, if they both are directly correlated, it makes much more sense, because retention, how much is revenue is coming from existing customers matters much more than how many new logos you are adding to your board and still generating revenue, because then sales team is always struggling.
Yeah.
It's sales, marketing, support, like it's a widespread responsibility. And that comes to my next question, like who owns CX? I believe it's like the whole organization owns.
Yeah, the challenge with if everybody owns it, nobody owns it, right? Does everybody play a part? Absolutely. Do organizations have to do maybe a better job of explaining the role that everybody plays and the impact that what you and your department has on, another department later in the experience? I think all of that matters. Where does leadership for customer experience really come from? It has to come at the executive level.
Yes.
And not only, and I would even argue as much as, your senior executive, whether it's your CEO or your president or whatever it looks like for your organization, there is one spot where everything converges. And I think that person plays a very critical role in setting the tone and the tempo for how that business designs and delivers their customer experience. Now, that said, I do think there is a very real place for a leader on the executive team who is the steward of that and the one who is thoughtfully designing things. The challenge about that type of leader is often the chief revenue officer isn't going to report to them. The chief marketing officer's not going to report to them, right? They're often a peer of that individual. And so to have somebody who's truly successful CX leader at the executive team, they have to not only have the ability to influence and work alongside their other executives, there's also an inevitable tension point where maybe the revenue leader or the service leader wants to do something and they're not in agreement. That CX leader's got to be entrusted to a certain level of authority and the backing of their boss, right? Be it the CEO or whoever, to make the decision there. That is, I think, one of the greatest challenges is right now. And actually, to quote somebody from the fall interviews, is they said any cross-functional decisions that they're having around this idea of end-to-end customer experience, right? All of the things working in concert is creating an all-out turf war because they don't have the right person at the executive level to actually move change. That it's an unsettling reality because for a lot of organizations, they're not at that level of maturity. And I think that also speaks to why our most experience is blasé.
Yeah, they're broken. Yeah. So, of course, leadership engagement is highly necessary to implement top to bottom, left to right, right to left, all across the board, the good culture, the enablement of employees to provide that level of service to customers so that it creates good customer experience environment. Customer experience is not a goal, not a metric as such. Customer experience is a vibe and is a brand that influences customers. They like it or not. That tells like how the customer is. 7 out of 10, 9 out of 10, it have different perceptions in it as well, because not all experience have same level of score for any business. Right? So it really depends. But from inside out and outside in, it has to blend. And leadership needs to be involved and facilitate that level of culture. That's what I feel. Like training is very highly necessary, enablement, because it's not scripted. You cannot have a rule book or a playbook to provide your customer experience. If customer calls in, like we're talking about customer center now, if customer calls in, it doesn't have to be scripted answer. Mm-hmm. Machines can do that. Even machines are more intelligent than playbooks right now. Yeah. So it should be case-to-case basis, plus like emotionally influenceable experience.
Yeah,
I think these are different dimensions has to be blended into CX.
Yeah, what's difficult to just pin down and be like, that's CX, is it's frankly pretty fluid.
Yes,
right?
It has to be.
There's always something that's happening, and maybe for this particular interaction, you've got a goal that you as the customer are trying to accomplish, or you as the organization are trying to accomplish, and I almost think of those as kind of mile markers along the way. And the challenge we shouldn't be trying to figure out as organizations is how do I solve the problem of having someone be a customer for life right now? Because that's actually not actionable. If you think about how do I get somebody to be a customer for life, the best decision that you can make is how do I make sure that they're a customer today? And tomorrow, how do I make sure that they remain a customer tomorrow? And part of that is about understanding the points of friction that they're experiencing. It's understanding the goals and the need and the perception that they have about your brand and the ways that they value or trust or want to work with you. Because what I can do is today, if I understand your need and your friction, well, the way I get you to be a customer for life is take care of the thing that happens today.
Yes.
Because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or 2 years from now. And I, as an organization, have to be willing to change and evolve and adapt if I want to keep you as a customer for life. Right? And I think too often people, hey, we have this, grandiose idea of what does it mean to deliver a great customer experience. And then when you're like, well, you don't get the little things right consistently. Do you think that might play a bigger role in somebody being a customer for life? It's like, well, that's not as sexy as AI and CX. No, but if you look at the reason why most customers churn or employees become apathetic, or where the actual undermining of CX happens, organizations fail to get the little things right consistently. Functional success today, whether it's marketing, sales, or otherwise, isn't about what happens in that function. It's about how that function works in concert with the other parts of the organization. That has to happen. The last third bit that I'd mentioned there, so if it's about curiosity, if it's about connectedness, about outcomes that are cohesive to the business of the business.
Every role has some angle to customer experience, and they want to be aware of that first of all.
Yes.
So internally, role has to have clear visibility. What is their role's influence to the customer, so they can play that role with customer in mind.
Understanding the cause and effect of the decisions that we make, whether it's through website design, policy implementation, that's a place where I would challenge anyone listening to this is, do we really have a good pulse on the cause and effect of our decisions as an organization?
Yes. You emphasize a lot on CX strategy to bring real results. How to make it happen? I mean, strategy are created in the boardrooms, and then targets are given to operation teams, budget is assigned, and then all matters after that is like P&L statement and those metrics that go to leadership slides and have to justify those. But that CX strategy to real outcomes that we are talking about right now from customer focused standpoint. What's your observation based on your research, like where the organizations are lagging? Where's the blind spot on this? Like where should we focus on for organizations to make that CX strategy successful to bring real outcomes?
Yeah. First off, this is probably one of my most favorite questions right now, because the opportunity to affect this is so accessible to anyone. Here's what happens, and you actually articulated this pretty well. You're like, so the organization sets their goal, and then you have a bunch of functions that then maybe make their iterations of it. It's like, oh, well, we're this department, so now these are our objectives and key results, or this is our department, and now These are our goals. And everybody has their siloed interpretation
Exactly.
of what that means.
That's what my observation is as well. Yeah.
Right? So to me, there's actually 3 really easy things that you can do to take this grandiose strategy and make it tangible, right? The first is, I don't care what function you lead inside of your organization, you play a part in the customer experience, and I think you should be curious about the impact that what your team does has on those that come after you, and be curious about how things that happened before that particular customer or whatever gets to your department. So I think one is just a genuine curiosity beyond your day-to-day, because you're fixated on your department, on your goals, on your objectives. So let's be a little bit curious about how CX plays out outside of what you see all the time. The second, I think, is there needs to be an absolute connectedness between how functional leaders are thinking about their goals and objectives and the downstream impact of those. And maybe one of the easiest to pick on is the classic disconnect that happens between marketing, sales, and then, we'll call it, account management or install, however you're thinking about it, right? Marketing, their quota too often is based off of eyeballs or a certain type of qualified opportunity, right? Really what it's about is getting this large group of people caught around an idea or an outcome, something. It's a big promise. You then take another team that's sales, in this case, that's further incentivized by what? Closed deals. And so then you've got another stack of promises that in some case force marketing to do different things. In some case, they force, later down the line something to happen, but you got a stacking of promises that are based off of what those individual teams are incentivized to deliver. And then you've actually got somebody who's become your customer, and their perception of what your brand is about and what it'll be delivered is the marketing promises stacked on top of the sales promises. And then when you look at churn and discontent and complaints and all of those things, so often it's what? The organization failed to deliver on the promises upstream. And yet that poor team is being held accountable for renewals and all this, but they can't affect the promises. All they can affect is recovery and trying to do better next time.
Yeah.
So that second bit for me is having a connectedness in goal setting and recognizing how, maybe the way that we think of functional success today, whether it's marketing, sales, or otherwise, isn't about what happens in that function. It's about how that function works in concert with the other parts of the organization, right? And so I think there's a bit that has to happen.
Yeah.
Correct. The last third bit that I'd mention there, so if it's about curiosity, if it's about connectedness, the last part is speaking about outcomes that are cohesive to the business of the business. And a quick quote from a CEO, he said, "Justin, I've been conditioned to not care about the things my CX leader measures." They're like, the last time I sat down with him and they're talking about NPS and quality and customer satisfaction, they're like, all of the things that they were talking about would lead me to believe that our business was in great shape. But the CEO said, revenue hasn't changed. Churn hasn't changed, right? You start looking at all of these things that they're thinking about all day, every day, and it's as if you would need the Rosetta Stone to be able to decipher how what the business is talking and measuring, the CX leader was looking at and thinking about. So that's the last bit, is if you're not well aligned with what the business of the business is about, you're going to have a really hard time.
Exactly. Yes. My observation is that like CX goals, as we started with, as those are seen as a project and seen responsibility of certain people in the organization, and marketing says, oh, our goal is to generate leads. Sales, oh, our goal is to close the deal. Support, okay, our goals are like reduce the call time, resolution time, things like that. CX are those 3-4 people it's their responsibility. That's where it fails. It's everyone's responsibility. I'm from marketing. I know, like, CX starts right before even customers are customers. Like, they are outside on the street, like they are looking at billboard. That includes customer experience too, like how the brand perceives, right? How they see ads on the TV. That all that is customer experience, and it has to be persistent. Means every team has to play their roles, as we just said, like orchestration. It's a group of amalgamated process that has to deliver one experience, regardless wherever the customer coming from, what channel they're interacting with, and it has to give that persistent.
Yeah.
That's when brand value is created, and when brand is connecting with customers, experience increases.
Yeah.
So all the team members, like even janitor, for example, of the company, customer walks in, cleanliness of the floor influences the customer experience.
Right.
So all the way from top to bottom. And leadership, still, I would say, I'll emphasize, like, the top leadership has to enforce that. They have to be part of the change. It cannot be enforced.
They do. The challenge is, so much of that can be intangible if we let it, right? It can be really difficult to know that, hey, you came in and you saw a bunch of stains and like gum into the carpet, and, right? If we don't have the right signals, and we don't have the ability to look behind even what's being said and done, we'll miss out on so much of that insight. Because, right, it is so massive, but because it's so widespread, it can also be easy to go after the wrong things, to just get the real value diluted. And I think that's another challenge for people who are making decisions around the customer experiences. Can you ruthlessly prioritize the things that have a material impact? Because you're right, everybody does play in a role, but I value the interactions with different roles in different ways at different parts of the organization, right? I may be willing to like let it slide on the thing that's splattered on the wall if something else that matters way more to me is always delivered with excellence.
You hit on the right spot, like how different roles interact with customers. I'm not directly interacting with customers being a marketer, but my digital properties are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my digital properties, my website, emails, social media, like all these properties of any business, they interact. It becomes digital experience. Right. So how digital properties interact with customers makes sense too. So that also has to focus like how customers will perceive that experience with your brand. There should no error. There should be sufficient load time of the pages, right? All those basic things. And content should be very user friendly. You have like responsive design. These are all basic things. But like these are right today in today's digital experience, these are implicit expectations.
Sure.
It is no more fancy. Like
Right.
Your website is mobile responsive. Oh, it's no longer a big deal anymore. So, and just added value to that experience, like how smaller the journey is, how many touch points user get to get the content they're looking for. That matters in the digital experience world.
Right.
To boost on the customer experience side. Yes, you said every role has some angle to customer experience, and they want to be aware of that first of all.
Yes.
So internally, role has to have clear visibility. What is their role's influence to the customer, so they can play that role with customer in mind.
Understanding the cause and effect of the decisions that we make, whether it's through website design, policy implementation, any of that, that's a place where I would challenge anyone listening to this is, do we really have a good pulse on the cause and effect of our decisions as an organization? Because again, I think it's interesting to, like, it's easy to make a decision on, yeah, you know what, the site nav it's going to be this. But does the loop ever get closed to find out that, hey, for this customer base who's trying to make this purchase journey, this is actually creating a ton of friction and we're losing business because of this. And so while conceptually this idea 2 or 3 work streams earlier was really sound, we're actually getting unintended consequences. And I think that's the unsettling part for most organizations. Nobody is maliciously designing a bad customer experience, right? There's not some secret cabal of like, ha ha ha, we're going to get them today.
Yep.
We have a ton of unintended consequence play out in our businesses between what functions think make a lot of sense for them don't make sense in the larger picture of things. And I think that's not easily solved, right? It's one thing to say, hey, Nav, I want you to understand how you affect the customer. Okay, I understand that. But do we have any mechanism to say, oh, by the way, this thing that we thought was best actually isn't? And so how do we learn from that? And how do we change? And what do we do differently? That's the missing part from what I'm seeing for a lot of organizations.
Then, yes, sometimes like if leaders don't like it, team doesn't implement that level of experience because boss said so. It is like enforced experience, and which may not be aligned with customer very well. Just because boss is saying doesn't mean it's accurate. So, as you said, it has to be data driven. It has to be aligned outside in at this point. So, whatever the problem is, there is a gap, right? Like current state and expected state. There is a gap. So it has to be aligned outside in at this point, I would say, to see where exactly we are missing the ball, so that like we fix that, and where it will come from. It will come from data and analysis, and how to fix that. Then that's the second step. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to understand the cost of complacency, right? So not just having it be data backed, but sometimes the data that we think is right is not the full picture. Or sometimes we have to make decisions without data. But what's difficult for organizations, once they've already started moving in a direction, especially if it's a larger organization, well, wait a minute, we have to change? Even for things that haven't been done for a very long time, organizations can be reluctant to change if there's been any investment in training, technology, right? There's a cost there. And I think organizations have to hold loosely, right, when they're deploying anything with their customer experience, right? What the data says today may be very different tomorrow or in 6 months from now. And are we okay with that? Do we also recognize that in some places the data might tell us that what we have isn't best? But I think about the law of diminishing returns that says, hey, the amount of energy and effort and expense that's associated with getting something closer and closer and closer to, in this case, the ideal customer experience can get very, very costly for the impact that it actually drives. And I think for organizations to understand, hey, there are certain things that we're not going to be able to do for our customers, and we recognize that there is a trade-off of that. I think that's, an important thing that definitely comes to mind as well.
Mostly customer service, it's always a complaint call.
It can be taxing.
It's mostly frustrating calls,
yeah. And
employees are under stress all the time.
Yeah. So you've got a bunch of compounding factors, but the thing that's always been really telling to me is, and this has absolutely been consistent for almost a decade now.
What companies should do in order to get there if they are not there already?
Oh.
Is there a shortcut?
If there is a shortcut, I am going to sell it and buy us both.
You brought a good point, actually. Qualitative analysis. Data could be partial, incomplete, or may not show the right picture. It happens. We have seen that a lot of times. And sometimes you have to make a decision based on what we still think is the good decision. It happens. And you do a lot of researches and you survey customers. And what is the value of qualitative analysis in today's world? Like, how often companies do that? What's your observation? And they rely on it, or they just still go by overridden decisions?
Yeah, I don't want to speak in a sweeping generalization for this one, but I'll tell you that more organizations than I think any of us should be comfortable with don't really dig in to the story behind the numbers. And just last week, this event that I was at, somebody was talking about their use of Net Promoter Score, and their organization is, massively fixated on the number, and they do nothing with verbatims. They just kind of have this, ego stoking around their improvement in the number without actually understanding what's driving it. We often, I think not just on the customer, but on the employee side, too often we get too little data too late in the process. And I've been thinking about the massive bias that exists within how most organizations survey. Right? That I think in and of itself could probably be another place where I'd rant for a really long time. Like, most organizations have really poorly designed surveys. They don't take the right approach to proactively surveying their customer base. They ask too many things. They stay too much on the surface. They don't really get in there to understand. You talked earlier about emotional, like, they really don't understand the psychology of the people that they're serving all day, every day. And I think the role could be very meaningful in helping organizations understand not just the thoughts and feelings and perceptions that their customer have, but if they put that in the right hands internally, they really could make better decisions. But too many organizations use numbers as kind of this general barometer on customer climate.
Because that's easy.
It's because it's easy. They make decisions off of, what they believe to be best. And believe me, I'm a big believer in, gut and intuition and experience. But there has to be some balance there. And I don't believe enough organizations have the right balance on really understanding what's driving customer behavior.
You're giving a lot of information and a lot of things coming in my mind. I want to talk about customer life cycle, lifetime value, and also the employee experience, because you brought up the employees portion here. And I want to talk about employee experience, because that happy employees means happy customers eventually. So yeah, let's talk about employee experience for now. What have you seen in your researches that, like, how enabled employees are lately, how aware they are for customer experience? Even like CX is all over the places, all slides, as we said, but how engaged employees are in that focus?
Yeah, so for the past few years, I've had kind of a standing set of questions I've asked frontline service workers. And it's really around understanding why do they choose that kind of work? What are they aspiring for? Where do they get excited? Where do they almost kind of like, what do they really aspire for, right, by stepping into that? But also, where do they get frustrated? Where do they become apathetic? What's undoing, right, their trust and faith and desire to serve people every day?
Yeah.
And
sorry, that's emotional aspect too. I mean, like, mostly for customer service, it's always a complaint call.
it can be taxing.
It's mostly frustrating calls. Yeah. And employees are under stress all the time.
Yeah. So you've got a bunch of compounding factors, but the thing that's always been really telling to me is, and this has absolutely been consistent for almost a decade now. If I ask you, so why do you choose this work? Usually there's a combination of two things. One is I think I'm a people person. I love serving others, right? There's some sort of servant helper mentality that's there, right? They want to help others. The other aspect is, they're very much seeing it as a transitional place. And it may be, hey, I really like this brand and I want to get my foot in the door. I have this degree and I can't find work, and this is where I'm going to land until the time being, right? So there's some aspect of, I want to help, and this isn't the final place for me, but ideally, this is going to prepare me for what's next, right? That's the win-win for the employee and for the organization if that employee feels like they're being prepared. Yet, when I look at what causes them to become apathetic, why do people leave their jobs or just kind of stay and remain disgruntled? Justin, I want to help people, but there is a tool or process or system or something that actually prohibits or limits my ability to do that, right? The organization says, hey, here's what I want you to do, but you can't do it in this situation, or we don't have the right thing to let you actually do that.
The playbook things.
So for most employees, their perception of CX work, and I'm really thinking CX in the terms of like frontline service work, right? I don't see this show up in somebody who's a marketer running a sophisticated, customer insights program, right? It's a different bit. But for frontline service workers, I would describe their perception of CX work as a chasm. It is this thing that they've fallen into, and they are trying to claw their way out of it as soon as they can. To flip that on its head, I think organizations could be doing a much better job of really showing CX as the catalyst to get you into what's next. And that opportunity really does exist there, but it's not going to happen by accident, and it's not going to happen unless we push kind of ownership and vision to the edges of our leadership structure. And I mean, this is the supervisor who's not making much more than those frontline associates. Like, until you can get them bought in and equipping and enabling those people, we're going to continue to see just this negative undoing of how service is actually delivered inside of our organizations.
So enabling them, giving them empowerment, and making it rewarding.
Yeah, it's connecting this to both kind of their aspirational identity, but also very tangibly equipping them to do the job that you've asked them to do. And it sounds silly, but too many organizations are stunting their employees' ability to drive impact.
Yes, exactly. So, and what companies should do in order to get there if they are not there already? Is there a shortcut?
If there is a shortcut, I am going to sell it and buy us both a boat. Look, the shortcut is very human. It is very relational. It is very one-to-one.
Yeah.
That's the shortcut. The shortcut is, if your organization is not operating with a people-first mindset, and I say people-first mindset
That's
in the
a good
aspect
one.
of,
I love it.
like, if you're not doing that, nothing else matters. You can throw as much like pomp and circumstance or vanity, none of those things will matter if at the core humans don't feel like they are being valued, that they're making a contribution. That's it. We're all looking for purpose and meaning. It's not any more complicated than that. That's the shortcut.
Yes.
So how do we make sure that every human-to-human interaction that exists in our business, whether it's between employees or customers, is one that creates value? It's one that is honoring. Right? That's the shortcut.
Treat employees like they are customers.
What? Shocking. Because they themselves are not your ideal customer. but they have a strong affinity for your brand. More importantly, they have influence and authority with a group of people who are your ideal customer.
How AI is helping lately, solving these problems, driving CX strategy towards real outcomes?
A couple things I want to say here. AI can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So I think we need to qualify AI inside of customer experience. Like, there are certain aspects of customer experience that AI has been helping for a very long time now.
Okay, let's talk about lifetime value and, and churn. Okay, customer is on board using the product. What are those metrics, like more than lifetime value and NPS, CSAT, whatever? Like, there are a bunch of metrics, and different companies have different priorities on different metrics. But what do you suggest are the right signals to increase the lifetime value and detect churn signals?
Yeah, so lifetime value has always been a difficult one for me, and I've taught workshops on customer lifetime value, and it's at first it's not a perfect science, and it can't and shouldn't be kind of the all-encompassing thing. Do I think that there are places where we can have revenue connected services and offerings? Absolutely, right? If we think about loyalty programs, they are fully built around this idea of customer value. And the customer who spends more with me gets access to these products or services. And so I'm not saying that it's not good in some of those aspects. But one of the interesting examples that I give is, so say you've got a customer that maybe they're an average spender with you. They might even be an underspender with you, because they themselves are not your ideal customer.
Mm-hmm.
But they have a strong affinity for your brand. More importantly, they have influence and authority with a group of people who are your ideal customer. One of the quick places where I see customer lifetime value potentially get unwound is organizations, for the most part, unless you have some really well built referral program and attribution, you don't actually know which of your average or underspenders happen to be some of your strongest promoters, because NPS doesn't tell you that, right? There's part of the reason why I am not a fan of Net Promoter Score is a couple reasons. One, to that point, I might not naturally be a promoter of anything. I might love you, but maybe it doesn't make sense. I think about this interesting story. I got a call from a woman once, was promoted to a role, head of customer experience role, and her executive teams wanted her to start measuring Net Promoter Score. She worked for a medical device company, and they had a device that helped men with erectile dysfunction. She said, Justin, they're not going out and talking about, hey, I struggle with this. I got this device and it changed things for me. She's like, they're not. What do I do? Because the organization still needs to understand like how the customers feel. In the same way, if there was another a financial services organization that this one team had to call people until they'd been denied for their mortgages. They still need to know what they did well and how they can retain that customer, but it's not going to be it. So, part of the challenge there, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but part of the challenge is just because you say I'd be a promoter, that doesn't equate to you actually promoting my products and services. And even if you do promote it, are you promoting them to the right people? The challenge with customer lifetime value is somewhat the same, right? If we want to keep it purely based off of how much the individual, the organization, spend with us, you can calculate revenue and you can run that, but that's actually not the true definition of customer lifetime value, because customer lifetime value would take into account your work as a promoter for us. It would have a broader kind of understanding of what is the actual cost to serve you. A lot of organizations might have, hey, here's the cost per contact. But over the lifetime of you working with our organization, I don't know how much bandwidth you've sucked out of, all of the AI you've been using and my back-end administrative cost. I don't know how much time you spent talking to employees at my brick and mortar location, and then they weren't able to opportunistically, serve other customers, and they walked out the door because you were too busy debating between color, right? This is the stuff where you're like, whoa, okay. It's really complicated. So where do I think organizations should focus? First off, I think you got to put metrics into two categories, those that are predictive and those that are reflective. What are the things that you can see that, if done, will move you closer towards the outcome you're hoping to achieve? Second part is, what are the things that you can look at that tell you whether or not you achieved that outcome? I'm a barbecue guy. I'm going to take a second to put it in barbecue terms. If I'm cooking barbecue for you, my reflective measure, one of my first measures is, do people go back for seconds? Mm-hmm. When the food comes out, does the conversation start, or do things get very, very quiet? Do I get positive feedback from people?
Yeah.
Right? And I've learned, hey, you can tell me, Justin, I really loved that. But if nobody went back for seconds, I start to wonder, did you really love it? Right? That's my outcome. That, for me, great CX when cooking barbecue is people going back for seconds and no leftovers.
Repeat business.
That's my goal. How do I predictively get there? Well, if I'm cooking brisket, I know that I'm going to cook it at 225 degrees for an hour and a half per pound. I'm going to use 50-50 salt and pepper rub. I know I'm going to, right? Those are the predictive things that I do. So if I was an organization listening to this, first off, you've got to define what is good. What does it mean for you to have great barbecue? What does a great customer experience look like? And then the things that I measure should either be predictive or reflective of that. And if part of what's reflective of that is how much money you spend with me over the course of a year or 6 years or however long you're a customer with us, great. But that's just a reflective indicator. It's not actually actionable. Just because you spent a bunch of money with me this year, that has no bearing on whether or not you're going to spend a bunch of money with me next year. So my bigger fixation should be on, what are the things that I can do to make sure you're equipped and able to spend a bunch of money with me next year?
Great. Yep. That's a good insight. How AI is helping lately, solving these problems, driving CX strategy towards real outcomes? And if it is not helping a lot, then how it can?
Yeah. A couple things I want to say here. AI can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So I think we need to qualify AI inside of customer experience. Like, there are certain aspects of customer experience that AI has been helping for a very long time now. Right? So that's the first bit. I think right now organizations are trying to figure out, how do we think of generative AI technologies? How do we think of self-directed AI technologies? How do we think of the application of AI in more visible ways than they've been historically? Right? That's what I think the big challenge is right now. Where I am seeing organizations struggle, it's really two things. One, identifying their first use case and having the right stakeholder group aligned to make it happen. For businesses that are actually actively piloting or want to be piloting, that's the challenge that we're seeing is, hey, how do we really understand our first use case? Who do we really need to have involved in the decision? And then what does it look like to organize the data, the systems, etc.? Why that's such a challenge right now is the technology companies are in the same place of, this is uncharted territory. They're building the technology right now. They don't have a ton of proven use cases. And so the technology companies are learning at the same time organizations are learning.
Yeah.
So that just makes it complicated. But I think for the larger part of organizations, you have probably a department in every company today. At least one department is thinking about what do they do with AI. But what I'd say is for the majority of the operations side of CX, they're getting involved really, really late in the process, if at all. In fact, what was interesting is I did a series of conversations with companies who have been in their AI deployments as part of their customer interactions. And I asked them a question of who's the stakeholder that came to the conversation too late in the process. Like now that you're down the road, you realize you involved them too late. And it was the CX operations. That's who's getting involved too late in the process. So, what are my 2 bits of advice in terms of how do you get it right if you're not already there? One, pull that cross-functional group together and talk about what a first use case could be. There are going to be conflicts around who's held accountable for the outcomes and what systems are you actually going to be able to bring together, right? You have to start by saying, hey, let's get a group of people to have the conversation. And then I'd say if you're listening to this and you're a CX operations leader, chances are that IT or marketing or other parts of your organization may already be having this conversation. And if you're not a part of it, you got to find ways to be a relevant part of the dialogue, because that's probably the most unsettling thing for me right now, is seeing how the historical maybe contact center leader is getting cut out of designing customer-facing AI.
I'm noticing like AI has been blended into the digital strategy for companies, like almost all of the companies lately. I mean, every company is exploring options to use AI. And from marketing perspective, I have seen like most of the chatbots are enabled very dynamically with customers lately. Very smart chatbots. They address customer questions very well, and even they before even they get to the real human support, I mean, most of the problems are being solved. According to the research I was reading the other day, it was saying like a company was able to improve customer resolution time by 85% just with chatbot by implementing a good technology chatbot.
Yeah.
So it's really helping businesses a lot. So other than that, I'm seeing it as like for example, this chatbot, like that's a good starting point because it has proven success already widespread. But companies can still pick one use case, run pilot with AI, because AI certainly have advantage or leverage to process huge data quite quickly and interpret it very well, and can with generative AI you can like discuss like simple English questions, right? You get answers in a human understanding way, right? So, and it's easy. It's a tool at this point. It's not like a dependable full-fledged technology at scale. Of course, some use cases are becoming dependable, but not especially customer experience when it's very sensitive matter. It is not ready, I feel, but for some use cases it is as well, because like I am also getting some of my problems addressed by some companies just with chatbots.
Right.
So it's really interesting. It's a good twist. And just recently, the ServiceNow acquiring Moveworks, that's a good shift happening I'm seeing, because Moveworks have done good job on the agentic AI use case. Like they defined employee experience so well. Like their service gets employees like company-wide data-driven AI results. I mean, employees can interact with AI with their chatbot or service or the agents and making decisions on that.
Yes.
And getting better results. With ServiceNow getting into the picture, I mean, who is actually a giant for customer experience side. So I'm seeing this marriage is going to be very well, I hope. So with this example, even Spotify, they announced like they're not going to hire people, the jobs that can be done with AI. I mean, that's debatable, but like companies are making bold decisions with AI.
Yeah.
So in that case, companies should still start looking at the low risk use case at least to fully rely on AI and see how it's going. Do A/B testing.
Yeah.
Split 50% to AI and see like who's winning. I mean, things like this is going to help. I mean, with AI, companies can save time, get better results, I believe, and do jobs more efficiently. Of course, it will not replace humans on all roles. Of course, like the roles that can be automated, of course, can be obsolete, and that's an opportunity as well.
Yeah,
people should skill up.
Yeah.
They should learn new things. I mean, when internet comes in, it was a chaos. When cloud came in, companies were reluctant to move their on-prem data, their sensitive data to cloud. Today,
still, I mean, if you look at the contact center market, over 50% is still on-prem, right? That's and we're 2 decades into the cloud.
But it's moving, it's happening.
It totally is, but it's
compared
not
to 10 years
overnight.
ago. Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
overnight.
I mean, with AI also, it will take time. I mean, we are not there yet.
I think we're in a 20-year cycle as well.
It's a good opportunity. I mean, with cloud, like compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's still growing up. And that brings me to another conversation of sustainability, because data centers are burning energy a lot. So, I mean, that maybe for later sometime. But for now, yes, AI is the future, and agentic AI is automating a lot of processes, and the work you are doing just in researches and understanding customer pain points and giving resolutions on top of that, I think that's the best input data to test on AI.
Yeah.
Maybe 10% with the low workload.
And that to me is the thing for every organization right now. It's like you don't get caught up in, hey, I don't think we can deploy this to our employees or our customers anytime soon. I'm gonna go back to that word of curiosity. Like, be curious around what could be. It's increasingly accessible for you to experiment, for there to be opportunities to get hands on. I mean, heck, in a few weeks, I'm doing it's funny, one of the technology companies said, hey, they invited me, they're like, we're having this thing where people can hands-on for 3 hours build a bot. They're like, we want you to come up with, so I'm still, I'll report back to you on like what I decide to do. But it's fascinating to me because there's an opportunity to experiment, to be creative, and to think somewhat without limits. And I think we should all be excited about that, because the potential, if done well, is awesome and creates really cool opportunity. And we can't let the reality that we are all going to make mistakes and something is going to get messed up along the way stop us. I mean, even 3 years ago, I did a research bit on chatbots. And since you mentioned chatbots, I want to bring this up. Over 3/4 of consumer interaction with chatbot still had to escalate to a live associate just 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm curious, I'm jumping into another research project where we're going to revisit some of those things. But the point is, it's the first anything is not going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
But for you to have the 10th, you have to have the first.
You have to have the first. Perfect. Great insight, Justin. One last question.
Okay.
So, as a hiring manager, what do you see or what do you look for in an ideal candidate who you think should be able to deliver good customer experience?
Oh,
big question.
Okay, when I had to get very creative about this, and I found what to me was just like my favorite. So when I worked back at Hershey, we had a very big seasonal influx in our contact center where I essentially had to quadruple my staff for a little bit more than 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
To the point of everything we've talked about, though, I didn't just want anybody on the phone. I wanted somebody that was able to deliver an exceptional experience to our guests. And as you can imagine, like a typical one ad wasn't just going to get me there. So a couple places where I found just incredible talent that even to this day, when I am like helping people think about who to have in your service organization, here are a couple places where I work. The very first for me was people who work in hospitality or food service. If I was out to dinner with my wife and we had an incredible server, I was approaching them about a job in the contact center or in another aspect, because here are people who are often used to seeing people at their worst. And, you know, for a lot of our stuff where you're not having to actually be with a person face to face, they're like, hang on a second, I can de-escalate anybody, and not having to have them like look me in the eye and make me really scared was great. So I've always loved looking at people who are working in restaurants or hotel or even retail environments. Like, again, often they're very service-minded. They're accustomed to working with all flavors of people. So that was one candidate pool for me. Second thing that I actually look at are people who maybe have experience leading volunteer organizations, but have been in a capacity where they have had to deal with the general public almost through like some sort of volunteering aspect. And I actually got this from my wife. So my wife now she actually is an employee, but she used to volunteer with the local soccer club. And as you can imagine, parents are people, and you get all sorts of just like wacky, zany stuff. And realize that, you know, in this case, volunteers are often like very well aligned with the mission. Like they're mission-minded people. Whatever the organization is, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so they're willing to see past just the silliness of people in pursuit of a mission. So that was often another aspect for me. It's like, hey, if you're willing to volunteer for a cause, you are someone who can be mission-minded. And with the organization does a good job of like articulating its mission and impact, you will find that, hey, if it's what they believe is an admirable or worthy cause, they're on board and they understand the cost of people being crazy sometimes. So that was a second for me. The last and the third was for, especially for me with seasonal work, were educators. And some of my best employees in my CX teams were either former teachers or they were people that were working for me in addition to being in the classroom. Again, talk about incredible work that is often way underpaid. And so you would have a number of them that were trying to supplement their income, and so would work either evenings or weekends or whatever it would be. So those are my three: service workers, people who have a propensity for volunteering and leadership aspects with volunteer organizations, and educators.
I like your approach because it resonates my choices as well. You are looking for personality. You're looking for talent that cannot be taught. You can train people with skills. Yeah.
So much is teachable. Someone's nature and ability to be passionate about something, to actually demonstrate their ability to be empathetic and gracious and kind and understand.
Yes, that's the ideal candidate persona, I'm sure. Yeah. Great insight, Justin. Thank you very much for your time today. Really insightful details, and looking forward to talk to you again some other day.
I'm so glad that we did this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I truly appreciate your time and attention. If something in this episode sparked a new idea, shifted your thinking, or even just made you nod along, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We are just getting started. We might have made mistakes. I promise we will improve. In every episode, I'm going to dive deeper into such conversations that impact us. And hey, if you're vibing with what we are building here, share it with someone you trust. That's how good ideas spread. Until next time, think holistic, think economics, think fast, and keep leading forward.